Hello, and welcome to the Knitting in the Hospital Wing podcast, episode 8. My name is Maggie KuusiKnits. I live in Denver, Colorado. You can find me on Ravelry as KuusiKnits and on Instagram as maggie.koos. What a lovely day it is today. I am back home down in Denver, actually just filming this podcast and then gonna drive back up to Steamboat. It's supposed to start snowing a lot, so I'm gonna spend the next week working up there, working on some research stuff, and a little bit of work for the Denver Health LIC, which was the program that I was in for my third year of medical school and something that I am still really active in. So yeah, that's what's in the store for me. I already have, I think, 20 days of skiing in this year, which is pretty bonkers and much more skiing than I've done over the last couple of years. So it's been really amazing, and I'm excited to head back up to Steamboat this afternoon to do a little bit more skiing and ski for the next week. But I have also had a lot of knitting time over the last week and a half or so, and like I said in my last episode, I'm trying to be a little bit more frequent with uploading these vlogs. So I thought that I would just start out by saying what I'm wearing. So this is the Montana Mountain Cowl. I call it my Hogwarts Library Cowl. It is a cowl by Andrea Mowry. And I've already talked about this, but I knit it out of Spin Cycle fibers and in the Rusted Rainbow colorway, and then Sun Valley fibers is the background color. I really love knitting this. It's something that I find really versatile that I wear all of the time. It's really warm because it's double knit, and it's just easy because you don't have to do anything. You just throw it on. The other knit that I am wearing, I don't think I've worn this yet before, but this is a sweater that was knit by my great aunt Dee, probably 50 years ago, which is nuts. It is, I think, knit out of a cotton, and it was knit for her, not for me, and I think it's just a vintage pattern, but it has these really amazing bobbles on the sleeves, and then on the body has bobbles, but then also a really cool cable motif, and I wear it all the time. It's a little bit cropped, it's a little bit oversized for me. My great auntie was a little bit larger than me, and so I think it actually has a really modern fit, being cropped and a little bit boxy. So I wear it all the time, and it really is the sweater. Once I realized that it was hand knit when I inherited it, my mom gave it to me last year, and it was actually the sweater that really got me excited to start knitting. I had never really thought about knitting before. I had dabbled a little bit in crochet, but I started wearing this sweater and I loved it. And I just realized that I could make that too, and got really excited about learning how to knit. And so this sweater and my great auntie was really the inspiration that catalyzed knitting for me in my life. So I'm really thankful for her. She was a really, really amazing woman. I'm really thankful for her, and I think that it's something that's pretty amazing that someone who passed years ago, I mean, she passed away probably 15 years ago, can still bring so much joy and touch people's lives in such a strong way. And, I think that's something that we don't even realize, is that even though we have people that pass away, even 15 years later, they can spark joy and spark inspiration in the people that they touched while they were alive. So my great auntie sweater, no idea what it's knit out of, no idea what the pattern is. For all I know, she made it up herself, but she was a really, really avid knitter and crocheter, and I feel really lucky to have inherited this from her. I protect it so much, but I also wear it a lot, and so want to make sure that it's kept in good quality. Because it's a worsted weight cotton, I think that it's pretty invincible, but it's definitely something that I'll want to keep probably for my entire life. It's really a heirloom piece for me. But speaking of heirloom pieces, I want to jump in and start talking about some of my finished objects. So, you guys, I really wanted, before I cast on anything for myself, I really, really wanted to finish Sean's sweater. It's the first sweater that I ever cast on. It's something that I've been working on since November of last year, of 2018. And so it was over a year in progress. It languished for a long time, but I finally finished it. Ah! So this is the Albion sweater by Michele Wang. It is a Brooklyn tweed pattern, and it is knit out of O Wool Balance in, I believe, the Sapphire colorway. It took me a really long time to finish this whip, and I've already talked about this, but since this is sort of my finished object talk this week, it took me a long time to finish this because this yarn is like horrible. And it's nothing to do with the brand of yarn or the dyeing of the yarn. It is literally just that the base itself was really, really hard on my hands. Like, it hurt my hands to work on. It was really sticky in a really bizarre way. It kind of felt synthetic just in when you're moving it around. The texture of it kind of felt to me like styrofoam. So needless to say, I will not be knitting out of this base ever again. But I think for Sean, it was a really perfect base for him because it is a mix of cotton and wool. So it's warm, but it's not too warm. It's not scratchy at all. Like, this is baby soft. I think that it's pretty invincible. It's something that he's going to have for a long time. With the cotton, I think it adds a little bit of structure and support to the wool. But it was just a really, really hard yarn to work with for me. But I still have a lot of love for this sweater because it's, one of the first sweaters that I ever knit on. And I found it to be a really easy pattern. I think this would be a great pattern for beginners. It's hard to see, but there's this really cool textured pearl bump motif that sort of has zigzag lines across. Other than that, it's a crew neck. It does have set-in sleeves, which was something new for me. So this was my first try at set-in sleeves. I think I did a pretty good job. It's definitely not perfect by any means, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I really found it to be helpful to reference the Very Pink Knits. As always, literally, that woman taught me how to knit, and I owe her everything. I love her. But her tutorial is really great and really outlines the need to use the removable stitch markers to kind of hold it together in the way that you want it to be, and then having the yarn come from the center and then go down on either side was also really, really valuable because it makes it so that what you see in the shoulder is perfect, but then the underarm might not be perfect. So this is definitely a little bunched up on the underarm, but nobody will know that but me and Sean, I guess. It fits him really well. He loves it. He's already worn it a couple of times. Sean is one of the most knitworthy people in the world, and it's kind of ironic because as soon as I finished this, I was like, I'm never gonna knit a sweater for you again. But it's a lie. I'm definitely gonna cast on another sweater for him this year. I think that it would be really special for him if I knit him one sweater each year, and I definitely knit myself a lot more than that, and so I think I can commit to knitting him one sweater a year. Maybe he'll get a sweater every Christmas. But yeah, the Albion sweater, I am calling this the Deluminator sweater for a couple of reasons. One, so the Deluminator is a magical object invented by Albus Dumbledore that has several different qualities, the most obvious of which is that when you turn it on, it sort of absorbs all of the light that is surrounding you. And you actually see it right at the very beginning of the first book when they are bringing Harry to the Dursleys for the first time. And Dumbledore apparates into Privet Drive and takes out all of the street lamps so that Hagrid can come in with the flying motorcycle and drop Harry off. And by that I mean Sirius Black's flying motorcycle. And it's a really interesting magical object, though, because it also has the ability to hold on to that light and then produce light or reproduce that light in places where they're in the dark. So you see that again in Malfoy Manor when Ron opens up the Deluminator and lights up the dungeon that they are stuck in. And then it also has another magical quality in that I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like it kind of produces love as a light and allows people to find each other, which I'm going to be reading about a little bit from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the 7th book in the Harry Potter series, a little bit later. I wanted to name this the Deluminator because it's this sort of dark royal navy blue color, which was how I imagined the Deluminator in my mind when I first heard about the magical object. And then also because the Deathly Hallows is Sean's favorite book, and so I really wanted to be able to think of a name that paid some homage to the Deathly Hallows, and Sean kind of reminds me of Ron Weasley in a way. He's sort of a mix, I feel like, between Harry and Ron, but so yeah, the Deluminator. I also think just because it's this dark color, it's not just what I pictured in my mind, but it's also the fact that the Deluminator kind of removes light from the area. So I thought just with a sort of dark color that also matched with the Deluminator. So I'll be reading a little bit more about the Deluminator in Harry Potter Talk. But yeah, that's my only finished object for this week, but it is one that has been long languishing, and I'm really happy I finished it. And it also makes me feel really comfortable about casting on whatever I want to cast on for myself. Sorry, I just got really great news. My family has been having a bit of a family emergency, which I won't go into here because it's not my story to tell, but my extended family is very, very close. I feel really thankful to have all of my cousins in my extended family really feel like siblings rather than cousins, particularly in 3 families. So my Aunt Susie, my Uncle John, and my family were all babysat by my Aunt Susie while we were growing up. She was our nanny of like a million kids. I think there were like 9 of us, which is like crazy bonkers that she, as a one-woman show, was able to manage that. But because of that, we are all really, really close. And I just got some really good news that one of my cousins is getting help, which is awesome. And I think it is hard to ask for help when you're feeling really vulnerable and feeling out of place. And so I'm really glad that's happening. But anyway, so that's why I just checked my phone, and I might have to check it again just because I'm giving a little bit of advice about that. So the Deluminator, I really, I can't say that I love knitting it, but now that it's finished, I really love it. And I loved knitting something for Sean because he is so knitworthy and such a wonderful partner, and because he himself is a maker in his own way, really recognizes how much work and love and care goes into making a garment. So I'm excited to knit something for him this year, but I'm going to give myself a little bit of time before I cast anything on for him. And I will not be using this yarn again. I actually have a little bit more of that yarn, and I'm kind of like, what do I do with it? Because I don't really want to make anything out of it, and I probably have about 100 grams left of it, but I can't make something out of it. So I don't know, I might donate it, or use it as scrap yarn to like teach or something like that. I'm not really sure. All right, so for some works in progress, I'm going to start by talking about my antler. This is in my antler and acorn bag, and this is the Diagon Alley Jumper by Fabel Knitwear. I am knitting it out of this gorgeous yarn that I showed off last time, which is the Caramel Mocha colorway by Woolberry Fiber Co. My husband bought this for me as a gift from Fancy Tiger Crafts for Christmas. This is their Berry DK, which is 100% superwash merino, and it is a dream. The colorway is this beautiful golden yellow color that has little pops of almost black, like a really, really dark black or really dark brown color, and then pops of red also, which is something that I never would have thought to put in together, but it is so fun to knit up. I have already finished the body up to the underarm. So this is knit bottom up, and then you cast on the sleeves. And you can see it's a cropped, tightly fitting sweater that has a little bit of a puffed sleeve. It's not a very drastic one, but a little bit of a puff sleeve, and then really cute puff shoulders and sort of a stand-up collar that I don't really know how to describe, but it's super cute. And look at how this is knitting up. I just absolutely love it. I have learned a couple of new skills with this sweater, which is surprising because it's mostly a stockinette sweater, but the main thing that I have learned is how to do helical knitting, which, why didn't I do it before? It's so stupid, but it is so easy. I think that for a like all over stockinette sweater, it is very straightforward to do. I don't know how it would work with a textured pattern, but definitely easy to do with this, with the stockinette sweater. So it's really beautiful. You can see the sleeve is just a 1x1 rib, and then you go into the sleeve itself. I've already just barely knit this sleeve on, and then I have cast on for the second sleeve, so I'm just working on the ribbing for the second sleeve right now. I knit all of my sleeves and things like that on 9 or 12-inch circulars because I know how to magic loop, and I do use magic loop for certain things, like when things are really small and I need to do like the top of a hat or the toes of socks and things like that, or the heel flap and gusset of socks. But in general, I find it to just be like too much to bother with. It's interesting because I feel like in the knitting community, there has been a really big shift towards top-down sweaters with no seaming at all. And I will say that I do like it when there's no seaming, even though I understand that the seam adds structure and allows you to make the garment a little bit more tailored, especially if you aren't sure how to work increases and decreases for your body. And I always thought that I would like top-down better than bottom-up sweaters. And this is the first real sweater that I have knit bottom-up, in which you knit the sleeve and then attach the sleeve and do the raglan decreases from there. And I have to say, I'm kind of a convert. I've been a little bit weary about casting on some of Fabel Knitwear's designs because most of her designs are bottom up, and I always thought that that would just be like hard. But honestly, it is so much more enjoyable to knit sleeves bottom up. And the reason why is that when you have a top-down sweater and you're knitting the sleeve, you have to picture that the whole sweater is like spinning around, and I just find it so annoying to have to like move the sweater around when you're knitting a sleeve bottom up and all you're doing is knitting the sleeve and then you're going to attach it to the body. It just goes round and round and round and round like a big sock. And so it's just easier to knit the sleeves, I think, when it's bottom up. And I also think that there's something to be said about getting kind of, when you're excited about looking at the colorway and working with a new yarn and casting on a new sweater, it's kind of nice to get the bottom of it out of the way, because I feel like oftentimes the bottom and the sleeves are the worst part of the sweater. So it's kind of nice to like work that out at the beginning. But anyway, I have been absolutely loving this. It has been a joy. I've only worked on it for a few days, so it's a really, really fast knit. The yarn is beautiful. The pattern is beautiful. About the pattern, I do think that Fabel Knitwear, because she is Norwegian, she kind of assumes that you know quite a bit about knitting. So for instance, it'll say make an increase here, but it won't say like exactly which increase you should make. And so for me, I learned the invisible increase on the Albion sweater, and I really like that because I do feel like it's very invisible. And so I have, sorry. So I have been using that on this, and I really like it, but in a way I kind of like that because you can do whatever increase you want to do and whichever one you like better, and it doesn't really matter which one you use. And so I kind of appreciate that the designer is just like, you choose, like do whatever you want to do, I don't care. And so I've been really enjoying that. But I would say that if you are a new sweater knitter, you will probably feel a little bit lost because it isn't laid out step for step. It is laid out step for step, but it doesn't have the amount of detail that American designers often put into their patterns. like I said, I kind of like that because I also feel like it makes me feel as though I have reached a new level in my knitting and can follow those a little bit more less detailed patterns. But I just want to, I know that there are a lot of beginners, and when I was a beginner, I think I would have felt really lost on those her patterns, just because if it's your first sweater, there's just not a ton of detail. But I will move on to my next whip. I just like finish Sean's and then just cast on like all of the sweaters for myself. So the other sweater that I cast on is the Koivua sweater by Caitlin Hunter. I've only knit on this for like, I think this is my third day knitting on it. I've already separated for the sleeves and started knitting part of the body because I cannot stop. Color work is so fun. It is so cool to see how the motif comes out. Caitlin Hunter does an amazing job in that there aren't long floats between her motifs, and so it's really easy to just go, 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 not worrying about catching your floats. I also find for me that Caitlin Hunter and I have like pretty much the exact same gauge. It's funny because I've heard other people talk about how Caitlin Hunter is a really loose knitter, and I think I have discovered that I too am a very loose knitter. And so, yeah, I am really loving this. This is the Koivua sweater by Caitlin Hunter. The motif that is on the yoke is so beautiful and so interesting. I really like that the neck is kind of like it's almost like a turtleneck, but not super tight fitting like a turtleneck. It's going to be oversized a little bit. It'll probably have like 10 or so inches of positive ease, and then will be a cropped sweater with beautiful color work on the sleeves as well. I really like that in between the color work there is textured stitches. I think it just adds a little bit of interest during the what would normally be stockinette sections. I love it. I like can't say enough about how much I love this sweater. I want to knit a million of them, but I'm gonna start with just one. But I am knitting this out of forget what this yarn is, but it is this really amazing, just like sheep cream, worsted weight, 100% wool yarn that I got at my local yarn store up in Steamboat. It's really beautiful. It's pretty affordable. I think for 150 grams, so they're big cakes, 150 grams, it's only like $25, which is a really great deal for this much yarn. And then the color work, so that's the background, and then the color work, I am knitting out of this Shibui in the brownstone colorway, which I think is actually a discontinued colorway, and then I'm holding it together with this yak that I got at my local yarn store up in Steamboat that is actually yak that live in the Yampa Valley. So this is from yak that live in the valley in which I grew up. So Steamboat Springs has the Yampa River that runs through it, and this yak is from up there. It is the softest thing I have ever felt in my life. It's amazing. I did buy 3 skeins of this. So this I used for the top skein, and then I'm working on another one for this sort of center, and then I'll have this one. I think that I might be able to get away with 2 skeins, but because I got this was like literally a one-time thing. They only had 3 skeins of it. There was like no thought that they would get more than that. So I just bought all of it. And I think that whatever I don't end up using here, I'll probably make into like a smaller garment or a smaller like cowl or hat or something like that, so that I can have even more of this in my life. But it's this really beautiful marled, I think it's sort of a DK weight. Sometimes it's a worsted weight yarn, but it's marled between like a dark brownish gray and a light brownish gray, and it is so beautiful. Holding this together, I have a calico cat named Sansa, and so I felt like these colorways were very reminiscent of her. So this is kind of inspired by her. Let's see. I'll just show a little bit of a close-up of this. So I don't know if it's easy to see the halo that the color work is creating, but it's this really beautiful marled color work where you get like little hints of the orange every so often, and then it just has this beautiful halo over where the color work is. I loved everything about it. I posted about this on Instagram yesterday and was really excited because Caitlin Hunter responded, like actually wrote something, and I was just like, lady, you are a very busy woman and making me feel very special right now. So that was really cool. I honestly cannot put it down. It's like all that I have been wanting to knit on. I am partially through the motif of the body. I'm honestly knitting it exactly as the pattern says. The only thing that I've changed is that I find that my color work gauge is a little bit tighter than my like stockinette gauge, and so in the color work I just go up one needle size. But other than that, I've been knitting it exactly to pattern. I'm knitting the medium, so I think it's like the third size, and it's perfect. It's the perfect thing. I hope that I finish it before the end of the month because it is a worsted weight sweater that is color work, so it's sort of like double that because in terms of the warmth, and so it's something that I think I will only be able to wear in the dead of winter, but it's perfect. I love it. It's probably my favorite sweater I've ever made, which I say that about all of my sweaters, but I think that I've just come to realize that color work is my jam. The only other work in progress that I have to talk about is a quilt that I am working on. So my sister and brother-in-law are adopting a baby in February, baby Koos, and we are really, really excited to meet him. I literally cannot wait, and so I have been working on a quilt for him. Becca, my sister-in-law, also loves Harry Potter, and so she asked me to make a quilt that is inspired by Harry Potter. And at first I thought that maybe I would do something easy like a Hogwarts house like chevron or something like that. But then I started thinking about I really wanted to learn how to do paper piecing, something, what, I don't know. But I really wanted to learn how to do that form of quilting, and so I found a pattern, and I will have to say in my show notes exactly who created this pattern because I don't remember off the top of my head, but it is a sock pattern. So it's you use paper pattern piecing to make sock blocks that look like little socks, and then my plan is to have one square that I just embroider Dobby and have it say socks for Dobby, and then all the rest of the socks, and I'm going to make them completely not matching at all. So these are the two that I have made so far. They're so cute. It has been really interesting to learn how to do this because it's definitely been a lot of trial and error. Like the back is a complete clusterfuck, but the front, it looks like a little sock. It's so cute. So I am really loving this. It does take me, so it's hard to see, but if I get a little bit closer, you will see how many times you have to sew when you're going around these round edges. So it does take me quite a while. It probably takes me like an hour or so to make one square, which is not crazy, but the squares are not very big. I think they end up being 6 by 4 inches. And so I just want to make as many of these as I can, and then before the baby's born. The back I'm going to do a very simple, I'm not doing anything for the black. I'm trying to decide if I want to do a flannel or a cotton and just have the whole thing be quilting cotton. I think I might do that just because this isn't something that's like going to be in his bed. I feel like it's something that he's going to like play on the floor on and stuff like that. It's nice to do a baby quilt because I feel like it doesn't have to be that big. So I think that I'm probably going to do like 5 of these across. Seems right. And then maybe like 4 down. I'm not sure. I'm going to just make as many as I can. And I'm having a lot of fun sort of piecing together different patterns and different scraps of fabric. And then I'll just go from there. But I'm really loving it. So this is going to be my Socks for Dobby quilt for baby Koos. I feel bad because I did not make one for Scotia, but that's okay. So yeah, Socks for Dobby. I only have 2 socks so far, but it is something that I will continue showing you because it's pretty fun. So that is all that I've really been working on. I've also put a couple of inches on Sean's Ben Solo socks, but it's not really that exciting because you've already seen the colorway and stuff like that. So just working away at that. Hopefully we'll get those finished soon. All right, so for future works in progress, I have a couple things that I'm thinking about. I have cast on a lot of big projects, a lot of sweater projects recently, and I feel like when I cast one of those off, or even maybe before that, so that I have a little bit of diversity of things that I'm working on, that I want to cast on a couple of smaller projects. So one of them is the Dreamin' Slowly hat. So I already made this hat out of a Homespun House's overdose awareness and some black mohair, but in my stash, I have had this beautiful dark red yarn from Madeline Tosh for quite a while, and then I also have this really amazing bright red mohair, and I want to make another Dreamin' Slowly hat holding these two together. I think that this is a little bit brighter red than I want, but with this dark red, I actually think that the play of those two together will be really, really beautiful. So that is something that I'm going to bring up to Steamboat with me, and something that I think I'm going to cast on here soon. I think it will be really beautiful, and I really like red, especially as a little pop of color, so I think that it's something that if I make it, I will wear it a lot. And I love the Dreamin' Slowly hat. It's a really easy pattern, really straightforward, but really fashionable and really just like fun. I don't know. I really enjoy seeing the fabric grow and change, and something that's really easy you can throw on while you're watching a movie or something like that, and you don't really have to think about it. It's totally mindless. So the Dreamin' Slowly hat by Layla and the Chain Fiber Company. I'm going to be casting that on soon as well. And then the other thing is I really want to cast on the Ravenclaw mitts. I think it's by Diana Walla. The Ravenclaw mitts are, I think she calls them the Wit Beyond Measure mitts, which is just great because it's a reference. But while I was visiting my sister, so in mid-December, I got this Rauma phenol, and it's in their deep royal blue color. That is a pretty good likeness. So I'm gonna hold this with this beautiful Madeline Tosh fingering weight to make those mitts. I think that these are gonna be something that I wear all of the time. I can represent my Ravenclaw pride with them. But I also really like this colorway because at first I wanted to make them out of bronze, but after looking at the different patterns that people have made on Ravelry, and I don't want to say that I don't think that their mitts were beautiful, because they're like amazing and so beautiful, and I prefer the bronze because it is the actual Hogwarts House colorway is blue and bronze. However, I like the contrast of having a gray more than the bronze. But I found this Madeline Tosh yarn. It's hard to see, but it actually has some stellina in there, and so it sparkles a little bit when it hits the light. You can kind of see it there, but it's this beautiful gray color that then also has splotches of bronze running through it, and so I think that it kind of will meet both of my desires for these. I'm so excited. I'm really excited to cast this on. I think that once I cast off my Caitlin Hunter Colorwork sweater, the Koivua, that I'm going to cast these on, because I think that I realized that I just really, really love colorwork. So having a bit of colorwork in my life all of the time is kind of a necessity. So the Wit Beyond Measurements and the Dreamin' Slowly hat are coming down the pike. So that is all for knitting chat. The next thing I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about Harry Potter. All right, so for our Harry Potter talk this week, I'm going to be reading from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which is the 7th and final book in the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. And I'm going to be reading from chapter 19, The Silver Doe. So just for a little bit of context, what has just happened is that Harry was watching and was sort of keeping watch while they were on their extended camping trip. This is after Ron has left them. And he's sitting there and he sees a silver doe Patronus. He follows the Patronus and finds the sword of Gryffindor. But it's below a frozen lake, which makes sense because in order to truly get the sword of Gryffindor, you have to show courage, because courage is such a huge part of the Gryffindor house philosophy. And so he dives in, but he's wearing the Horcrux around his neck, which then tries to strangle him, essentially. He is saved by no other than Ron Weasley, who has found them, and Ron uses the sword of Gryffindor to destroy the Horcrux. So this is right after they destroy the Horcrux, and they're sort of getting ready to walk back to the tent. "I'm sorry," he said in a thick voice. "I'm sorry I left. I know I was He looked around at the darkness, as if hoping a bad enough word would swoop down upon him and claim him. "You've sort of made up for it tonight," said Harry, getting the sword, finishing off the Horcrux, saving my life. "That makes me sound a lot cooler than I was," Ron mumbled. "Stuff like that always sounds cooler than it really was," said Harry. "I've been trying to tell you that for years." Simultaneously, they walked forward and hugged, Harry gripping the still sopping back of Ron's jacket. "And now," said Harry as they broke apart, "all we've got to do is find the tent again." But it was not difficult. Though the walk through the dark forest with the doe had seemed lengthy, with Ron by his side, the journey back seemed to take a surprisingly short time. Harry could not wait to wake Hermione, and it was with quickening excitement that he entered the tent, Ron lagging a little bit behind him. It was gloriously warm after the pool in the forest, the only illumination, the bluebell flame, still shimmering in a bowl on the floor. Hermione was fast asleep, curled up underneath her blankets, and did not move until Harry had said her name several times. "Hermione!" She stirred, then sat up quickly, pushing her hair out of her face. "What's wrong, Harry? Are you all right?" "It's okay. Everything's fine. More than fine. I'm great. There's someone here." "What do you mean? Who?" She saw Ron, who stood there, holding the sword, dripping onto the threadbare carpet. Harry backed into a shadowy corner, slipped off Ron's rucksack, and attempted to blend in with the canvas. Hermione slid out of her bunk and moved like a sleepwalker toward Ron, her eyes upon his pale face. She stopped right in front of him, her lips slightly parted, her eyes wide. Ron gave a weak, hopeful smile and half raised his arms. Hermione launched herself forward and started punching every inch of him that she could reach. "Ow! Oh, girl! What the? Hermione, ow! You complete arse, Ronald Weasley." She punched every word with a blow. Ron backed away, shielding his head as Hermione advanced. "You crawl back here. After weeks and weeks. Oh, where's my wand?" She looked as though ready to wrestle it out of Harry's hands, and he reacted instinctively. "Protego!" The invisible shield erupted between Ron and Hermione, the force of it knocking her backwards onto the floor. Spitting hair out of her mouth, she leapt up again. "Hermione," said Harry, "calm." "I will not calm down," she screamed. Never before have I seen her lose control like this. She looked quite demented. "Give me back my wand. Give it back to me." "Hermione, will you please?" "Don't you tell me what to do, Harry Potter," she screeched. "Don't you dare. Give it back now. And you!" She was pointing at Ron in dire accusation. It was like malediction, and Harry could not blame Ron for retreating several steps. "I came running after you. I called you. I begged you to come back." "I know," Ron said. "Hermione, I'm sorry. I'm really..." "Oh, you're sorry?" She laughed, a high-pitched, out-of-control sound. Ron looked at Harry for help, but Harry merely grimaced his helplessness. "You come back after weeks, and you think it's all going to be all right if you just say sorry?" "Well, what else can I say?" Ron shouted, and Harry was glad that Ron was fighting back. "Oh, I don't know," yelled Hermione with awful sarcasm. "Rack your brains, Ron. That should only take a couple of seconds." "Hermione," interjected Harry, who considered this a low blow. "He just saved my..." "I don't care," she screamed. "I don't care what he's done. Weeks and weeks. We could have been dead for all he knew." "I knew you weren't dead," bellowed Ron, drowning her voice for the first time and approaching as close as he could with the shield charm between them. "Harry's all over the Prophet, all over the radio. They're looking for you everywhere. All these rumors and mental stories. I knew I'd hear straight off if you were dead. You don't know what it's been like." "What it's been like for you?" Her voice was now so shrill only bats could be able to hear it soon. But she had reached a level of indignation that rendered her temporarily speechless, and Ron seized his opportunity. I wanted to come back the minute I disapparated, but I walked straight into a gang of snatchers, Hermione, and I couldn't go anywhere. A gang of what? Asked Harry, as Hermione threw herself down into a chair with her legs crossed so tightly it seemed unlikely that she would unravel them for several years. Snatchers, said Ron. They're everywhere. Gangs trying to earn gold by rounding up muggleborns and blood traders. There's a reward from the ministry for everyone captured. I was on my own, and I look like I might be school age. They got really excited, thought I was muggleborn and hiding. I had to talk fast to get out of being dragged to the ministry. What did you say to them? Told them I was Stan Shunpike, first person I could think of. And they believed that? They weren't the brightest. One of them was definitely part troll, the smell of him. Ron glanced at Hermione, clearly hoping she might soften at this small instance of humor, but her expression remained stony above her tightly knotted limbs. Anyway, they had a row about whether I was Stan or not. It was a bit pathetic, to be honest, but there were still 5 of them and only 1 of me, and they'd taken my wand. Then 2 of them got into a fight, and while the others were distracted, I managed to hit the one holding me in the stomach, grabbed his wand, disarmed the bloke holding mine, and disapparated. I didn't do it so well, splinched myself again. Ron held up his right hand to show 2 missing fingernails. Hermione raised her eyebrows coldly. And I came out miles from where you were. By the time I got back to that bit of riverbank where we'd been, you'd gone. Gosh, what a gripping story, Hermione said in a lofty voice she adopted when wishing to wound. You must have been simply terrified. Meanwhile, we went to Godric's Hollow, and let's think what happened there, Harry. Oh yes, you know whose snake turned up. It nearly killed both of us. And then you know who himself arrived and missed us by about a second. What? Ron said, gaping from her to Harry, but Hermione ignored him. Imagine losing fingernails, Harry. That really puts our suffering into perspective, doesn't it? Hermione, said Harry quietly, Ron just saved my life. She appeared not to have heard him. One thing I would like to know, though, she said, fixing her eyes on the spot a foot over Ron's head. How exactly did you find us tonight? That's important. Once we know, we'll be able to make sure we're not visited by anyone else we don't want to see. Ron glared at her, then pulled a small silver object from his jeans pocket. This. She had to look at Ron to see what it was showing them. The Deluminator? She asked. So surprised, she forgot to look cold and fierce. It doesn't just turn the lights on and off, said Ron. I don't know how it works or why it happened when and not any other time, because I've been wanting to come back ever since I left. But I was listening to the radio really early on Christmas morning, and I heard you. He was looking at Hermione. You heard me on the radio? She said incredulously. No, I heard you coming out of my pocket. Your voice, he said. He held up the Deluminator again. Came out of this. And what exactly did I say? Asked Hermione, her tone somewhere between skepticism and curiosity. My name, Ron. And you said something about a wand. Hermione turned a fiery shade of scarlet. Harry remembered. It had been the first time Ron's name had been said aloud by either of them since the day he had left. Hermione had mentioned it when talking about repairing Harry's wand. So I took it out, Ron went on, looking at the Deluminator, and it didn't seem different or anything, but I was sure I'd heard you. So I clicked it, and the light went out in my room, but another light appeared right outside the window. Ron raised his empty hand and pointed in front of him, his eyes focused on something neither Harry nor Hermione could see. It was a ball of light, kind of pulsing and bluish, like the light you get around a portkey, you know. Yeah, said Harry and Hermione together automatically. I knew this was it, said Ron. I grabbed my stuff and packed it. Then I put on my rucksack and went out into the garden. The little ball of light was hovering there, waiting for me. And when I came out, it bobbed along a bit, and I followed it behind the shed, and then it went inside me. Sorry, said Harry, sure he had not heard correctly. It sort of floated towards me, said Ron, illustrating the movement with his free index finger, right to my chest. And then it just went straight through. It was here. He touched a point close to his heart. I could feel it. It was hot. And once it was inside me, I knew I was supposed to do. I knew it would take me where I needed to go, so I disapparated and came out on the side of a hill. There was snow everywhere. We were there, said Harry. We spent 2 nights there, and the second night I kept thinking I could hear someone moving around in the dark and calling out. Yeah, well, that would have been me, said Ron. Your protective spells work anyway, because I couldn't see you, and I couldn't hear you, and I was sure you were around, though, so in the end, I got in my sleeping bag and waited for one of you to appear. I thought you'd have to show yourselves when you packed up the tent. No, actually, said Hermione. We've been disapparating under the invisibility cloak as an extra precaution. And we left really early because, as Harry says, we'd heard someone blundering around. Well, I stayed on the hill all day, said Ron. I kept hoping you'd appear. But when it started to get dark, I knew I must have missed you, so I clicked the Deluminator again, and the blue light came out and went inside me, and I disapparated, and I arrived here in these woods. I still couldn't see you, so I just had to hope one of you would show yourselves in the end. And Harry did. Well, I saw the doe first, obviously. You saw the what? Said Hermione sharply. They explained what had happened, and as the story of the silver doe and the sword in the pool unfolded, Hermione frowned from one to the other of them, concentrating so hard she forgot to keep her limbs locked together. But it must have been a Patronus, she said. Couldn't you see who was casting it? Didn't you see anyone? And it led you to the sword? I can't believe this. Then what happened? Ron explained how he had watched Harry jump into the pool and had waited for him to resurface, how he had realized that something was wrong, dived in and saved Harry, then returned for the sword. He got as far as the opening of the locket, then hesitated and cut in, and Ron stabbed it with the sword. And it went just like that, she whispered. Well, it screamed, said Harry with a half a glance at Ron. Here. He threw the locket into her lap. Gingerly, she picked it up and examined its punctured windows. Deciding that it was at last safe to do so, Harry removed the shield charm with a wave of Hermione's wand and turned to Ron. Did you just say you got away from the Snatchers with a spare wand? What? Said Ron, who had been watching Hermione examining the locket. Oh yeah. He tugged open a buckle on his rucksack and pulled a short, dark wand out of its pocket. Here, I figured it's always handy to have a backup. You were right, said Harry, holding out his hand. Mine's broken. You're kidding, Ron said, but at that moment Hermione got to her feet and he looked apprehensive again. Hermione put the vanquished Horcrux into the beaded bag, then climbed back into her bed and settled down without another word. Ron passed Harry the new wand. About the best you could hope for, I think, murmured Harry. Yeah, said Ron. Could have been worse. Remember those birds she set on me? I still haven't ruled it out, said Hermione's muffled voice from beneath her blankets. But Harry saw Ron smiling slightly as he pulled his maroon pajamas out of his rucksack. I have to take that, so I will continue Harry Potter talk in just a second. Oh, sorry. So, I love that scene because I feel like it's when the three musketeers get back together, and from there the story just becomes absolutely bonkers because they, have something that they can use to destroy Horcruxes. They start finding Horcruxes really quickly, and yeah, it's just it's an incredible part of the story. And I also think that I love the fact that Dumbledore left the Deluminator for Ron because he knew that he would leave. He knew that he would sort of go through that part of the hero's journey where he questions it and he leaves and he says, no, I don't want to do this. And then he immediately finds out that he does want to do it. And I just love how J.K. Rowling works in the humor and the heartache, and it feels so real. It feels exactly how you would feel if something like this happened and how you would respond. And I love that. I think that she did a really amazing job at illustrating how Hermione is feeling and how frustrated she is and how she doesn't give a fuck that he just killed the Horcrux and saved Harry. She's mad, and that's all that she can think about is how mad she is. Because that's how you would feel. You wouldn't just be like, oh, okay, well, everything's fine. And I love Hermione's sarcasm here. I love how she's like, oh, that really puts our suffering into perspective, doesn't it? Couple missing fingernails, great. Which is just so funny. But I also really love the sort of blue light. It makes me wonder if maybe Dumbledore, I think it's clear that Dumbledore knew that Ron was going to leave and that not only that he would leave, but that he would want to come back. And that's why he bequeathed this in his will, why he bequeathed the Deluminator to Ron in his will. But it also makes me wonder that Hermione always makes those little flames that are in the jars, the little blue flames, and they describe it as a blue flame. And I know they describe it as a blue flame that you sort of see around a portkey, But I wonder if maybe it was the blue flames that Hermione makes that sort of came in, and they talk about how those blue flames are warming the tent and how it went into his chest and like warmed his heart, and then he just disapparated. It makes me wonder if the Deluminator does that for everyone, or just maybe two people who are kind of like destined to be together, or who have a deeper connection, and have that sort of warmth of love surrounding them, even if they haven't really admitted it to themselves or to each other yet. I love that. I think one thing that the movies and the books have separate, which I think is much better in the movies than it is in the books than it is in the movies, is that you really see the subtle falling in love of the characters in the books in a way that you can't see in the movies. I think a lot of people who have just seen the movies get really confused about why Harry and Ginny end up together, because they don't have the buildup of the whole book in which he's thinking about her and mad that she's with Dean and like frustrated and trying to figure out for himself why he's so frustrated, and then when he realizes that he has feelings for her and kisses her after a Quidditch win, like it's this really magical, crazy moment that has been built up throughout the whole book, and I think for people who just have seen the movies, it's kind of came out of nowhere and they didn't really understand why it was important. But I also think that you see that build up with Ron and Hermione really early as well. Even in the fourth book when Hermione is going to the Yule Ball with Victor Crumb, and Ron is really jealous and really worried about it and kind of mad at her, and that whole interaction, and it's the seeds of this are really planted very early and kind of continue throughout the rest of the series. Also with like Lavender Brown and when Ron's in the hospital and things like that, it's something that had kind of been hinted at very early, and the character progression grew and had them grow together. Just great. So yeah, I love it. I think, the Deluminator is such an interesting magical object, and I think that the fact that it has multiple layers and is more complex than what initially meets the eye is a really interesting story. And J.K. Rowling, she did it again. So good. So that is all for this week. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that everybody is enjoying their winter so far. The winter solstice just happened a few weeks ago, so it's still early winter now, but we're getting there. Yeah, that's all I really have to say. I'll be putting in a little bit of footage just from the last week in here. It's not a whole lot, but mostly just, show some skiing, some things that I've been up to. So I hope everyone's happy and healthy and enjoying the new decade, the Roaring 20s, 2020.
To brag. What the fuck does that mean? And they pop up from behind the bar and he goes, "It's Irish for you're fucked." Ooh, buddy. Sick. Damn.
Yeah.